Hello, hi, welcome. Welcome, hi. Thanks so much for joining today. Wonderful to see everybody joining. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining our last webinar of the season. So far, we've had quite a few, and we've talked about different things that might help you in preparing your YSEALI Seeds for the Future application for 2021 application cycle. So thanks for joining. Hello, welcome everyone. So just a reminder to everyone, you do have a chat function on the bottom of your screen. So please say hello to us. Tell us where you're joining from. I always love to see where people are tuning in from today. We do see somebody from the Philippines, from Vietnam. Hello, wonderful to see you. Welcome everyone. Another reminder is we do have a Q&A function as well. So it's another button right next to chat. So Q&A function is something we will use for specific questions for the webinar. And we are doing it so we don't lose any questions that are coming in from you all. So please, for any questions you have for the material I'll be covering today, use the Q&A. But if you'd like to say hi and let us know where you're coming from, please use the chat and say hi to us. Hello from Myanmar, hello from Vietnam, wonderful. Thank you for joining, everyone. It's a joy and pleasure to be with you this morning for me. I'm joining from Washington, D.C. and evening for you in Southeast Asia. So thank you for staying late for those of you who are far away. And we are about to start our last presentation. So let me try to set up my screen, and welcome to those of you who are just joining us. Welcome. All right. So give me just a second while I'm setting up my screen. All right, I think everyone should be able to see my screen. So please let me know in the chat, just so I know that everybody can see everything okay. Okay, I hope you can see the slides. Yes, okay, wonderful, thank you. All right, beautiful, thank you everyone. Okay, so today is, like I said, our last webinar, but nevertheless, it's an important topic. Today, I wanted not only to get together and kind of answer some of the questions that we see coming into our email, some questions we see from previous webinars, but also talk about some examples. I know people have been asking a lot, well, can you show us some example of previous YSEALI Seeds grantees who managed to get sustainable project going after they graduated from YSEALI Seeds and all those kinds of things. Again, my name is Natalia Etn. I'm a program officer at Cultural Vistas. And Cultural Vistas is the organization here in the United States who manages YSEALI Seeds for the Future program. And again, just a reminder for those of you who are joining for the first time, just so you know, we have had a few webinars already. So if you missed any of those, please feel free to watch those recordings, and I do have a link on the screen right now. Also, everybody who joined today with your email address, you will receive an email from us with the recording of this webinar and the slides that I will be showing today. And my colleague Jill is also joining me today from New York City. So hi, Jill. Jill will be moderating our chat, and you see she just posted a YouTube channel playlist for this specific webinar series for you. So you can easily click on that and save it so you can watch it later. Thank you, Jill. All right, so as I mentioned, important dates here to note is that the application deadline is coming in quite soon. So we don't have as much time left to submit your applications. And quite honestly, I still expect quite a few applications to come in. We don't have as many. So do hurry up and do put in your applications so you're not missing out on the chance to be selected this year. All right, so again, for those of you who are joining for the first time, just repeating this key information as well. Once you submit your application, we will be reviewing, and there is going to be quite a process for the review where the State Department will be participating in that, as well as the embassies. So we want you to understand that it might take a while, and those teams who are selected will be notified in February 2021. So you will, if you are selected, you will receive an email from us. If you are not selected, you will also receive an email from us. So make sure that your emails are correct and good when you submit your application, because those are the emails we'll be using to notify people of the selection. Once participants are selected, we will have a kickoff workshop, which is a 2-day virtual training where we talk about different things, and I'll actually go deeper into that information later today. But that will take place in March, and then from then on, your project implementation will take place from March to December 2021. So you will have 9 months to work on your project and complete it. Again, thinking about the long-term perspective as well, but the specifically YSEALI Seeds period of your project implementation is 9 months. And then the final reporting on your project is expected in January 2021. So this is just something for everybody to know in case if there are still questions on those dates. So again, the kickoff workshop I've been talking about for a while, just wanted to show you some photos. Those are actually from 2019 when we met in Jakarta with selected teams, and you do see some of the teams, you might recognize some of them. But this was a beautiful time, and typically kickoff workshop is something that we do to kickstart all of the projects when we bring together everybody and we have intense time for teams to meet each other, have some sort of peer feedback. We also invite alumni to share wisdom and some other important and interesting information as well. So the way we are going to handle it this year is going to be in a virtual format, just to keep everybody safe and follow all of the guidelines and directions. We still hope that we might be able to do an in-person meeting maybe later at the end of the project implementation, so the teams could still meet each other. But this would be something to be decided depending on how the situation goes. But typically the kickoff workshop, all of the expenses like travel and lodging expenses are covered by YSEALI Seeds, so the participants do not spend their funds on traveling to the kickoff workshop destination. And typically there are 2 team members for each team who get to travel to the kickoff workshop. So that's just something for you to know if you're curious. But then back to our virtual kickoff workshop strategy. So again, as I said, it's an opportunity for everybody to meet all the project teams. It's quite a beautiful networking opportunity to learn about other people's strategies, some tools, some interesting ideas and the ways people work. And there's so much overlap in how projects are done in different countries in Southeast Asia, and quite a bit of it people can learn from each other to enhance their projects. So definitely a good opportunity. We will do it virtually as well, have a breakout rooms for people from different projects to meet, especially those projects who have similar themes. We will definitely talk about budgeting and expense management. I know that a lot of you have been emailing us asking questions about your budget right now, and it's great. I love it. But I also want to highlight, don't stress about it just yet. Once you are selected, we will have guidance for your budgeting and expense management. And once selected, the project teams, after this kickoff workshop and the key information you receive, you will have a chance to revisit or review your budget and resubmit it again based on the information you receive during the kickoff workshop training. So this is just something for you to know. Then we will also cover, monthly, midterm, and final reporting, how it should look like, how you will be submitting it. So all of those things will be talked about, and we will train you on once you are selected or your project is selected. We will also talk about branding and how to showcase your project. We will talk about monitoring and evaluation, how to receive and give feedback from your peers from other projects. And of course, there will be some coaching from previous YSEALI Seeds grantees, from alumni, specifically who've been successful in their projects in different aspects of it. And so they will be delivering some information. Last year, we have a wonderful opportunity with some alumni actually presenting on reporting or presenting on how they manage their expenses and their budgeting. And that was quite wonderful to see. So, and again, now, once the kickoff workshop is done, there off you go for your project implementation. And as I said, it's going to be 9 months, but it doesn't mean that your project needs to stop after 9 months. You could definitely still implement your project with the funding you receive from YSEALI Seeds, and then plan your project long term after your YSEALI Seeds funding is over, with some alternative financial sustainable plans that you might look at or think about while you are still during YSEALI Seeds implementation period. So you will be also, as if selected, you will be responsible for monthly narrative and expense reports. As I said, we will talk about it more in detail once you are selected. Midterm and final reports as well, there's going to be specific guidelines. So that's why, as you remember, I was saying that it's important to have different roles within your team, just because not everything falls on the project leader to do, right, or one person to do. So that's when it's good to have team effort and other people support each other in making sure that reports are submitted in a timely manner. So we also typically do projects of the month highlight, and that's something that you might have seen on the YSEALI Seeds website. So every month we highlight a few projects and do a story on them, so everybody in Southeast Asia could learn about great things that they are doing. And the projects also do a social media takeover, where a project could take 1 week and take over YSEALI Seeds Instagram page and do their own sort of promotion of their project, which is another way to get attention, do some outreach and get some good numbers of people tracking or following your project as well. So we will also do virtual community meetups during the project implementation. That would be a time to meet with YSEALI coordinators, think about some strategies for your project development and things like that. So really useful time, again, to network with each other. And then typically we have a big virtual reception as well. That's a public event. Some of you might have participated or have watched the recent one we had at the end of September with At America in Jakarta, where we highlighted a few projects who were interviewing each other live. And that was also a nice way to present about, or kind of like tell the world about you and about your projects and things that you do to attract more attention to the cause that you care about so deeply. All right, so I want you all to right now also pay attention to this information. I know it's a little bit dry to talk about numbers and all the specific things, but it might be helpful and important for some of you who are still working in your application and your budget specifically. Also would like to remind that you can submit your questions in the Q&A button that you see on the bottom of your screen. Once I'm done with my slides, I don't have that many today, I will dive deeper in all of the questions that you have today. All right, so let's see. Some questions are coming in about how the funds will be distributed to the projects once they are selected. So here is an important thing for you all to know. If you are selected, once your project is selected, after that kickoff workshop and after the training you receive on budgeting and expense tracking, your team will have a chance to revisit your budget, resubmit it to us again. Once your budget is approved, you will receive your first 60% of your entire total amount that you requested. So, let's say you requested $15,000 total, right? That's the most that you can request. So you will receive 60% of that in the beginning in March 2021. Then you will be submitting us monthly expense reports, so we see how the expenses are going, if you need any help, any support, or any guidance at all. And then at the midpoint of your project implementation in the summer, you will be submitting your midterm report, again with financial expense report as well. At that point, you will receive 35% of your total funding. And then once you're done with your project, and once you submit your final reporting to us, you will receive your final 5% of your total requested amount. Okay, and typically that 5% that you receive after project implementation, that's something that should be planned for you to support your sustainable operations in the future. So you can put it towards, something that you want to build with your project to carry on what you're really doing. Okay, so that's something for you to keep in mind. In the past, though, sometimes we did have some projects that had heavy expenses during the implementation period, so they had to reimburse some of the funds that they had to spend out of that 5% of funding that they received later on. So those things, again, I just want you to not worry about as much yet. Worry about your proposal and your application right now. Once you are selected, that's when we will be working individually with each project to help you strategize, your plan. But right now, this is just for your overall information if it helps you in building your budget overall. So I see good questions coming in. Keep them coming. I will take a look at them in just a moment. So another thing is people were asking, I mentioned in the webinar about cost share or additional funding. So just so you know, we encourage you to, have some kind of cost share if you have it, or, apply for other grants or other funding. Maybe you have a fundraiser. That's great. We will never say no. This is a wonderful opportunity for you to get more funds. Besides, if you have other sources of funding other than YSEALI Seeds, they might be less restricted on some of the things that you can spend money on. For example, as you know, for YSEALI Seeds, YSEALI Seeds funding cannot be used to pay sustained salaries to your staff. Well, this is where maybe a cost share or another source of funding come into the play, where you could, let's say, apply for a grant that does not have that restriction, and out of that source of funding, you can pay salary. So this is just a smart way to go about it, but I want to highlight that this is not a requirement. Your project is not going to hurt, or is not going to, well, I should say your proposal is not going to be in disadvantage if you don't have an additional source of funding or a cost share. It is not a requirement. It's just something that is good to have if you have it. I feel like some projects don't tell us about this because they are afraid, what if it's going to impact negatively on them being selected? And I would say no. It's good to show that you do have some kind of financial plan. You're not going to be disadvantaged because of that, but you're also not going to be in disadvantage if you don't have that either. So another good thing to keep in mind, if your total amount that you put in the budget is less than $50, it does not need to be itemized. So again, what we don't want you is to worry about putting $1.05, $3.75 in your total amount budget on certain items. And then when the real life comes and all of a sudden that amount is not $1.05, but it changed. So it just keep in mind that the tiny little amounts, have a tendency of changing prices, and it's just difficult to keep track of that accurately. So if it's under $50, that's fine. You can just estimate. But if it's more than $50, then you need to itemize it or tell us exactly, break it down. One thing I would give as an example, what I see is some budgets submitted will have, we have a website development, and they put $4,000 total. And that's all I see, website development. And for me, it's like, what does that mean? Does it mean you have to pay for labor, for the actual work on the website to a web designer? Does that amount include domain? Does that amount include promotion? So that $4,000 is a big amount. So when I see that it's just website development and $4,000, I initially want to know, what do you mean by that? Can you break it down? Show me, show me what it is for, or name it specifically. If $4,000, let's say you're just paying for a person to develop it, then you need to name it specifically, like a contractual fee or contract or whatever, consultant fee or something like that, that is understandable, that expense is, basically the entire expense, does not break it down more specifically. I hope that makes sense, everyone. Let me know. And I did put an example here as well that might be helpful. Some of you might look at this unit cost, number of units, and then total, and think, what do they mean by units? Well, exactly, units could be something different for each of you. What I would like you to do for you and for us, it's going to be more easy and clear for you to specify, what do you mean by a unit? That could be easier. Unit could be an hour, could be months, could be for advertisement, whatever it is. But see how much more clear this example become when you say, instead of just web design and under unit cost, you could put 25, and then number of units you can put 1, and then all of a sudden the total is 200. And that would be what is that 25? Is it 25 per hour? Is it 25 per month? Is it per? So it's like lack of information here. But once you specify that $25 per hour is what it costs to work on web design, and then you estimate that it might be around 8 hours. That's what your web designer told you. So this is where your amount then comes in as a total, and it becomes very easy for you to keep track of and for us to understand as well. So I hope that it's a little bit more clear now. Let's see, I'm jumping over here a little bit. So, and the final point I would say is just try to make sure that the amounts, the total amounts in different subcategories of your budget are spread out evenly, meaning that, so you have, as you remember, you have like personnel, you have other, you have supplies, right? So your supplies subcategory, let's say, should not take out the majority of your budget or more than 20% of the total amount that you request. So it's more or less need to be evenly spread. Otherwise, I mean, there are cases when some projects would be more sort of heavy on expenses for personnel, some more heavy on expenses for some supplies, but you need to explain it in the narrative or in your proposal so we understand the nature of the project and why such a financial planning is important and vital for your project. But overall, try to not put, out of $15,000 that you request, let's say $7,000 goes to personnel, and then the rest, a little bit to supplies and a little bit to other. So in this case, it's not super evenly spread out, and we might just need to understand why that is the case. So again, but you're not going to get disqualified. What I'm saying is the only time when your proposal might be hurting is if you are not following the rules that are stated in the budget template. For example, you should not be requesting sustained salaries or heavy durable equipment, and things like that. So as long as you stay with those guidelines, that's okay. If you maybe have not have a perfect budget just yet, you will have a chance to work on your budget if you are selected. You just need to demonstrate to us at this point that you have an idea of how you're going to operate the money you will receive. So it's more or less seems logical that you have a good planning in mind, that you have a good sort of budgeting and expense idea overall, so you will be able to work on the project and spend the money. Okay, so and then in terms of proposals, some of the frequently asked questions that we see coming in. Again, so in the last webinars, I've been giving some examples on the slides for how you can structure your proposal, right? For those of you who remember, we said that you could do the introduction, like let's say 1 paragraph, then the body of the statement, which is 3 paragraphs, and then the conclusion of your proposal, which is 1 paragraph. Again, that was just a helpful guideline, kind of suggestion as we gave, or an example. It does not mean that you need to stay strict and do it exactly that way. It's just something for you to help, structure your thoughts and structure your ideas in some kind of logical way, so it's easier for you to build and easier for us to read. But if you have your other innovative way of putting together a proposal that is clear and carries the message you want to tell us, it's fine, it's up to you. So it might be 4 paragraphs instead of 3. That's fine, as long as you still stay within the guidelines and then the rules of how many words per section you can submit. You'll find. Again, same goes for the resumes. They can come in any format you like. You don't have to. We don't have any specific format that you need to follow. So anything you like. Again, whatever you think is make it easier for us to understand the best things that you want to tell us about you and your project. Okay, so every time you think about, and it's not just for YSEALI Seeds, for other programs you participate in as well, when you submit your proposal for something, think about whoever is going to be reading your proposal. So what can you do to make it easier on them to get all of your great ideas right away? So think about that. So again, it's helpful if you provide an anticipated project timeline. If you have it, it is not required. But if you'd like to, include one little table that says, in March we anticipate to launch, partnership meeting or something like that, and then in July we plan to have our big, boot camp, and then in November we plan to have a final conclusive meeting or something like that. Just like a rough estimation is helpful just to see, and it's helpful for you also to understand how your project is going to play out in the 9 months period. Okay, let's see what else here. Some of you have been asking, well, what if we are not experts yet? We are just young leaders. That's great. That's fine. We understand. And yes, it is. YSEALI's motto is never too young to lead. And this is great. So what do you do in this case? Well, what you do if, let's say, in your resume, you don't have as much experience, or you've had some volunteering or internship experience, but not a lot in the specific area or industry that you want to do your project in, well, then in your proposal, you need to mention that you have some either established connections with some other experts or consultants or organizations, or you're planning to establish some connections. So there are some coaches and mentors and guides who can supplement or help add those gaps or discrepancies that you have in your experience, but you overcome it with your passion and your interest, okay? So, because as you know, as young leaders who do things in your communities, you know that sometimes it's not enough just to have a lot of passion. It's great, it's wonderful. Without that, it's difficult to do anything. But once you have passion and you add some of the wisdom to that, that's when it becomes strong. And by wisdom, I mean knowing who to ask for support, where to go for the information, how to research, how to learn about things you don't know. So those are the things that help really add to your passion and make it a solid, idea, turn it into actionable idea, okay? So we do encourage you to include, consultants or experts or trainers or anybody else, like different organizations, into your proposal if you already know them, or hoping to start, reaching out and establish some partnerships. But again, I want to say it is not required. It's good if you do have, and this is just a secret out to you in order, like how to supplement what is lacking in your application with what you can, come back and add what is lacking. So if you are logical, look at your resume and you understand, wow, I'm lacking experience that I can show to prove that I'm capable of carrying out this project. What can I do to, combat it, or what can I do to address it? Well, you can go and put in your proposal that you are going to either hire or attract specific team members that can supplement that. So this is just one of the ways of being strategic and smart about your proposal to have a better chance of being selected. Again, so it's never a problem if you don't have as much experience. That's fine. You just need to have a plan, is what I'm saying, okay? So another thing I want to see for you all is do your research. By research, I don't mean academic publication. I don't mean to go to university and publish a paper. By research, I mean just a search in your network, in your community, or maybe online to understand what is the landscape, or what is the sort of what's happening with that specific industry or area that you're going to do your project in. Because so many times I do see projects submitted for an idea or a project that is already happening in that area, or is already happening in that community and happening quite successfully. So there is no need to recreate the wheel, as we have that saying. So basically start over and do the similar project. Instead, maybe it's better to reach out to that organization that is already established and doing good work in that area, and maybe see how you can either build on their success or do something that they do not have capacity to do. And then you can come with your project and help out the cause with the specific thing that they have not been able to do, So again, your idea of a project needs to be helpful and needs to be innovative, but it also needs to be feasible and needs to be sustainable. And for that, you do need to know who are the players in the game. If you look at the chessboard, right, you need to know all of your players here. And so that's very helpful, and it will show that you don't come to this YSEALI Seeds application with just an idea like, oh, I'm going to, apply just because, I want to. It's more, I have thought of it, I've researched it, I've reached out to people, I have a solid understanding of idea of what I'm going to do. And so you don't catch yourself in the midst of the project thinking, well, I haven't thought it through. I don't really know if I can pull this off. I don't know if I can finish this project because I haven't thought of all of these obstacles in advance. So we want you to think about those things and show us in the proposal those things. So I'm talking a lot, but hopefully this is helpful. You guys let me know. Let me actually take a look at some questions before I show examples of some projects from the previous YSEALI Seeds grantees. All right, so we have a question here. I want to ask about the budget. You mentioned that no large item and durable equipment, and we want to ask for fund on the camera for our virtual project. Is that accepted? Thank you. So good question. If it's a camera which is not going to cost as much, we're not talking about $1,000 or anything like that. It's typically is allowed, again, if it's essential for your project and you can tell us why. For example, we don't have a way to create content for our social media, and having a camera is the only way for us to do that. That's fine. Everything needs to be within reason. Again, right now, I don't want you to worry about it as much because you have not been selected. So you can put it in your budget, in your proposal. Once selected, we will definitely discuss those things and in each individual case, try to investigate it and work on it together. But for now, yes, go ahead and you can include it and just explain why. So another thing I would say, sometimes it is cheaper to rent a very large, heavy equipment than to buy it. And actually it is more encouraged, and this could be technically more allowed under YSEALI Seeds funding regulations. So if you do have one big equipment item that you need to use only once, and you need to rent it out for that specific event, and it's much cheaper, this could be allowed. Now, there are other cases when it is cheaper to buy rather than rent an equipment piece. In this case, we need to work with you individually to figure out how you're going to dispose that item after you're done with YSEALI Seeds. Are you going to donate it to a university or to a library or to a local community, or you continue to use it to benefit the community? So all those things. So sorry, I wish there was an easy yes or no answer to this, but my overall bottom line key point here is, in individual cases, some things could be allowed in terms of smaller equipment pieces, and we will work with you to investigate and figure out what can be done. But again, if it's easier for you to include that equipment piece under a different funding source, I will just say go ahead and do it if you have a way to do it. In the budget, can we allocate 10% contingency fund? Yes, you can. This would be a good actual idea for everybody, just to allocate. Some people I do see just put miscellaneous, or you can do contingency budget. And what this could cover typically is, let's say there are bank transfer fees or currency fluctuates, and you need to have some kind of cushion or some kind of funds to help balance what you might be losing during those bank fee transactions or currency exchange or anything like that. This is just one of the most common, unexpected expense that I do see during the project implementation. So it's good to put like 5 to 10%, just so you have that. You don't have to stress out during the project implementation itself where to take this money to cover, so it's good. Can we add an item in the budget as contingency fund to account for possible fluctuation of cost and expenses? You just read my mind. This is great. Wonderful. So we did answer that one. So do we have to follow the subcategories under the budget template given? We can't really travel these days, so we most likely won't stand on that subcategory, and we'll allocate more to others. Yes. So the template we provided is just that, it's template, right? So it's it's basically, if the needs of your project are telling you that instead of travel, now it's going to be lots of virtual expenses. For example, you need to have a Zoom subscription, and you need to add some kind of other, hosting fees for website or something like that. I'm just making things up as I go, but definitely you can change that category for something that works for your budget or for your project specifically. So again, The categories that are in the template are just something that we most commonly see in the projects. And this is just to give an overall guidance for you so you know where to start from when you think about building a budget, but you don't have to follow it if it does not fit with your needs. It needs to fit with your project's needs. Thank you for your questions. Very good. All right. And then we have just a couple more. So what are the categories of a budget proposal? There were 4 mentioned in the budget template: supplies, travel, personnel, others. However, it's mentioned earlier that one category cannot exceed 20%. If there are 4 categories, each category may be around 25%. Again, as I mentioned, the template is just a rough estimation of your categories. You can build, let's say 5 categories or, 6 categories. The main point here is that one category, one subcategory in your budget template cannot be more than 20% of your overall total amount. So that's just that no matter how many subcategories you have, it just needs to be a reasonable sort of evenly spread amount. But again, I should say here that there are exceptions, and the nature of your project might call for more of an expenses on supplies or on travel or in personnel than other categories. So you might not have anything in travel at all, like somebody mentioned. So in this case, you reallocate that or take out the travel category altogether and replace it with something else. Bottom line is that one subcategory should not allocate most of your funds, right? It just needs to be more or less even, or have a substantial explanation for why one subcategory takes all of your funds. I hope that makes sense. So let me know. If you still have questions, feel free to send us an email, and my colleague Jill will put in the chat the email address that you could reach us out at if you have any additional questions about that. Okay, so thank you. Very good questions, everyone. Is international airfare to and from our home country, for example, Malaysia, to project country, for example, Vietnam, is allowed? Yes. So air travel for your participants or, let's say, project team within Southeast Asia is allowed. So the travel, let's say, between United States and Southeast Asia is not allowed. So within region, you can plan the travel expenses for your participants and your project team. So good. Again, I would just mention here that it's important to keep, safety in mind for sure, and just plan something that will keep you and your participants safe. And thanks, Jill just posted in the chat the email address. So it's YSEALI@culturalvistas.org. It will have it. I will also have it on the last slide as well. So if you have still questions. If our program part of organization, can we encourage to include our organization as consultants, or only outside organization and stakeholders and communities? That's a good one. So typically I would say here, if your organization, so you are applying as a part of organization, and let's say a business side of your organization will be providing some kind of professional consultancy. So in this case, you could, pay the professional consultancy fee to that business side of the organization according to the market price. So if you would say, if you would have hired an organization or a consultant anyway to do the essential work for your project, let's say you're hosting a workshop and you're hiring, 3 trainers, right, as professional trainers to deliver a training on, I don't know, leadership, right? So typically, that in that area, the market kind of price for paying, fee to that trainer is, let's say, $20 for an hour, right? But then at the same time, you as a project treasurer happen to be a professional trainer doing trainings on leadership as well. So, and you are lacking 1 trainer, right? So you have 3 and you need 4, let's say. So if you are paying $20 an hour to those other 3 trainers you hired from outside, and you come in as a 4th trainer that is essential for the project, you can pay that money to yourself as well, just because you are paying the same amount equal to the same professional trainers providing professional services in the same capacity, and you happen to have those qualifications. So again, this is something that we will definitely work on once projects are selected in each individual case, just because there's so many areas of uncertainty that sometimes we need to get approval from the State Department to understand and make sure that this US government funding that we are providing is used within the specific regulations and purposes. But yeah, so again, back to the question, you could basically charge or kind of pay consultancy fees to the organization, business side of your organization, if it's essential, or if, let's say, you're giving a more of a discount for your project than somebody else you would have hired with that same professional qualification. It just basically boils down to good communication, explain what is happening, why you're doing that, so it does not look as a sort of self-gratification in a way, or self-aggrandizing, I think is the better word here. Basically should not look like you're using YSEALI Seeds funds to fund your for-profit business side of your organization. So I hope that answers that. So the answer is yeah, yes, just give explanation for that. And again, you're not going to be disqualified just because of that. When we review all the projects, we'll look at all of the things together in the application. And so if there are some discrepancies we see in the budget, but the overall idea and the project looks fantastic otherwise, you might still be selected, and we will just work with you to polish up your budget so it stays within the regulations. Okay, so we just need to submit the form. No need to make new format of the proposal. So, and they provide the link to the application itself. So yeah, you need to fill out that application. So Jill, if you could also put the link for the application itself. Again, it could be found on the YSEALISeeds.org. So on our website, there is an actual button that says apply here. And once you click on it, it takes you to the website, to the application site. And so in the application side, you need to fill out information, but you also need to attach your documents like your resume, your abstract and proposal, and your budget also, and any supplemental additional documents. We covered this more in the webinar number 1 and 2. So if you'd like to go back and rewatch that when we talked specifically about pieces of the application, let's go ahead and do that. All right, during selection process, is there an interview, just in case some points of the proposals are not very much clear? So we do not have interviews for the selected participants, just because it's a different type of program that have different layers of selection, with multiple entities or organizations and people involved. So we do not interview you. That is why it's so important for you to be clear in your proposal, okay? So yeah, no interviews, but once you're selected, we work with you to work on any discrepancies after that. Is the project supposed to be non-for-profit? What if there is an opportunity to sell something? Is that allowed or not allowed things? Wonderful, we've covered that in previous webinars, but for right now, I would say, while you are receiving YSEALI Seeds funds, you cannot charge public any fees or any money. So all of the things that you produce from your project should benefit the community. And you cannot charge, let's say if you put together a good training on leadership, I don't know why I talk about this today, but we go with this example. So if you do a training on leadership and you invite people from the public, you must provide it for free. You cannot charge them money to attend your training so you can make money, because you are receiving US government funds, and that's the rules and regulations of the funds. But now, here is another thing. There are some models in which some projects, they serve as an intermediary between, let's say, the community and the, let's say, farmers. We have projects this year when they might, sell items from the farmers to the community, but they do not keep the money. They bring it back to the farmers. They pay it back to the farmers, for example, right? So it might seem like they are charging money from the public, but they are not. They are becoming that entity that supports the specific business or community in need to help reach their audiences, and they are serving as that intermediary for the specific purpose of their project. Another way is we still want it to be a sustainable project, right? So you would ask us, well, wait a second, how am I going to do this, right? You're not allowing us to make money while we are on YSEALI Seeds funds. So how are we going to survive this after we're done with the funding? So good question, I'd say. And here's where you think about long-term financial sort of structure for your project. For example, while you're on YSEALI Seeds, you can design specific, educational materials or training materials, or build something or design something or do something that later on you could monetize in a way that can help you support your operations so you could keep on doing the work for your community. As an example, even a team right now in Indonesia, what they're doing is they're recording like songs and different educational materials, like reading materials, to help learners learn how to read. And then, so their goal is to later on, once they're done with YSEALI Seeds this year, later on, they will be able to basically charge consultancy fee if, let's say, a local university wants to invite them to give a training on reading or different kinds of things that they developed, right? So they will be able to charge some money and say, okay, university, you want us to come and bring our great materials for your students, it's going to cost this much. And so the university will pay them, they will come and bring this material and make a little bit of money to cover their operational costs so they can keep on building their project. Long answer, but I hope that helps you see what we are talking about here. And again, once selected, we will talk about those strategies as well. So will COVID-19 testing be allowed in case there is a face-to-face meeting that is necessary? Yeah, it is allowed. We will never say no if that makes sense and you have access to those tests. And this is something that you will require for the project. You can go ahead and do it and include however much it's going to cost for your participants or key team members or whatever it is. So you can just include that in your budget. All right, great questions, everybody. I do see quite a bit coming in. Just a reminder for those who might have joined later, there is a Q&A button on the bottom of your screen, so you can submit your question over there. Let's maybe pause here for just a moment, and we'll go into some examples on the slides, and then I will take the rest of the questions. So since we were talking about long-term sustainability, right? So I wanted to bring some examples from previous grantees from a few years back. So this one you see is Ecophenopoly. The team partnered up. The team was from Indonesia, Myanmar, and the Philippines, and they were awarded in 2017. There is a website you can check as well, but basically their idea is that basically they built a social enterprise that encourages environmental education through a board game. So they designed that board game while they were on YSEALI Seeds, but then later on, once they're done with YSEALI Seeds, now they can sell the board game, now they can partner up with other organizations, consult them and things like that. So that's a good way to do it. So another one is Y Farm. Also a team from Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. So you see a lot of those multi-country teams. Another 2017 grantee here, and the website you can check out as well. So their idea was to train next generation of organic farmers in the Mekong Delta region. So again, a good, strong project that exists to this day. And I know that they've been applying for other sources of funding as well and working with the community to help support. And I think it operates in Vietnam only right now, if I'm not mistaken. Another good education project example from Myanmar, they were awarded in 2018. And so what they did is they built education solution and became like a provider for education solution to provide access to education. So they do have a very good website, and I think they do different things like consultancy, and they keep adding different aspects to their work so they can, sustain themselves and sustain their operations as well. So some of you might have heard of them, especially those of you in Myanmar. And another one, Reef Steaks from Malaysia. You might have also seen or heard of them as well. They design a card game to help teach about marine ecosystem and coral reef ecosystem. Also very cool idea and very interesting game as well that the team is able to think through and kind of figure out the financial plan for that as well. So you can also learn more about them on their website. All right. And then I know that throughout this webinars, I've been talking a lot about 2019 grantees and 2020 grantees, just because those are the most recent ones. That's why today I wanted to highlight some of the older projects from the very beginning. But one, I should mention the final here from 2019, Tesdopi from Cambodia. Also a good example of how the existing organization applied for YSEALI Seeds grant to build a specific aspect of their programming. And this is an application based. I know I've had a question about that too. So they designed an app that helps high school students in Cambodia kind of prepare better for math and science exam after they graduate school, so they have better access to better jobs later on based on the results of that exam. And again, a great organization exists to this day, and they found the way to sort of balance between the business side of the organization that already exists and adding this resource for the public benefit as well. So, and again, I could go on and on. There are so many other wonderful organizations that sort of came out as YSEALI Seeds grantees. You can check them all on the YSEALI Seeds website. So it's YSEALISeeds.org. So you can click on each cohort 2020 or 2019 and read more and find other projects that are quite impressive as well. So, and again, if you have questions, you can always email us specifically, and I will go back to your questions right now, just as I promised. Just wanted to make sure that I highlight some of those projects as well. So let me quickly stop sharing my screen so I can look at you and you can look at me in just a moment. All right, so I think we are back. You can probably see me. And again, if you still have questions, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A so I see them all and they don't get lost in the chat. We will spend the next few minutes specifically looking at your questions now, just like we promised. All right, let me get organized here. All right. Okay. So the question is here, the team members are employees of an organization which has expertise on community organizing. Can the team hire, pay as professional fee the organization to create the project community organizing training model? So it's similar to the question we had earlier. So I would just say everything needs to be within reason. If, let's say, so your question right now, I'm looking at it, and my concern here that it looks more of like a sustained salary versus hiring a trainer for a one-day workshop or a two-day workshop, which could be still okay because you pay yourself as a professional trainer, same like you would pay to other professional trainers you are hiring, sort of. But here it looks like you as a part of your organization will be working on creating the project basically for the longer duration of time, and you will get paid for creating that project. This might actually not be quite as allowed, because what it looks like is that you're paying yourself for working on the project, YSEALI Seeds projects, and as you know, you cannot receive salary or get paid for working on the YSEALI Seeds project. It's a volunteer-based project idea. But again, I might need to understand better your project overall, your proposal, the premises of that, to be able to provide a better guidance to you. What I would say right now, you should just apply, work on your budget as much as you can, put the best estimates you can. Honestly, in your case specifically, you can just include in the budget that there is going to be a professional fee paid for, module training development, right? Whether you will pay to your organization or to another organization, that's something that could be discussed if you are selected. But you can just include that there is going to be fee in order to develop like a module of sorts. Again, we can talk about it and discuss and see what is allowed and what is not in your specific case. So I hope that makes sense. On our project proposal for sustainability of our project, can we describe about apply for fund on other organization. So you're probably asking if you can tell us that you have applied to other organizations for funding for your project. Yeah, you can mention that. It doesn't hurt. It's a good idea to mention that. You don't have to, but it's good for us to know and just see what other expected funding that might be coming your way in addition to YSEALI Seeds. If we pass the seed grant, what is our mechanism for reporting it? Is it every month reporting because our program is in a location with a difficult internet connection? Ooh, that's a tough one. So you will be responsible, as I mentioned earlier, you will be responsible for submitting monthly reports. Then there's going to be midterm and a final report. And you have to be on time with your monthly reports because we collect all of the reports, we analyze them, and we send them to the US mission to ASEAN. So it is essential for you to have access to internet at least sometime. You don't have to have it all the time. We don't expect you to be online, every single day, but specifically in the beginning of each month, you will be submitting that monthly report. Another important thing for you to consider is that you will be expected to participate in different virtual events that we will host for the cohort, for the selected teams. Those virtual events will happen maybe 3 times throughout the year, 3 to 4 times throughout the year. So you need to plan on that as well. I would say if there is a way for you to include, let's say, maybe like an internet fee of sorts, because there's no other way for you to get connected, there might be a way for you to add it into the budget so you can be connected at least on the time, like during those times when you have to be online. But yeah, it's good for you at least to have a plan on that. Thank you for all of the questions. I do see quite a bit coming. So don't forget that we would prefer for your questions to come in the Q&A versus chat, because in the chat, there is a chance that I will not see them or lose them because there's so many things coming in the chat. All right, let's see. We have a few more minutes here. Our project is work like an IT startup project. It's hard for us not to list the internet, electric, water, even food in a small house to build the algorithm to make a model for outcome, combined like plug in to school system. Okay. So I'm not sure what's your question. I guess you're asking, what to do if you need to have an overhead expense because you're building an app. Well, unfortunately, it looks like you might not be then within the scope of YSEALI Seeds, because YSEALI Seeds funds cannot be used to pay, electric bill, water, 9 months in a row. You need to figure out other way. And so other application-based organization, what they did is, YSEALI Seeds projects, what they did is, because they have an organization and they might have other products that they offer for profit, so they would cover, let's say, expenses for office, like electric bill and other things, or they will cover salaries from their for-profit side of the operation, just so then the nonprofit side, the YSEALI Seeds projects, does not get charged for those expenses. So basically the YSEALI Seeds project is still working and happening, and basically they get to have rent free of charge because the for-profit side is picking up that bill. So I hope that makes sense. This is like one of the ways to tackle that. Do we need to show the details about the materials that we are going to insert in our projects? We plan to go under the economic growth theme with digital platforms. So do we need to show the curriculum and details concerning that platform? Thank you. No, you don't have to. If you have it, that's great. Sometimes I saw people would do some kind of prototype or have just a mock sort of prototype slide of sorts. So you can include that in your additional supplemental documents. And you can attach it. It's nice if you have it, but if you don't, that's fine. Don't worry about it. You can just tell us what it is in the proposal and just mention that you will be building it during your YSEALI Seeds, and that's fine. Can we add subject matter expert fees, which is paid by hour? Yes, this is something that I've said before. If you're hiring somebody to provide professional consultancy, or let's say you hire a web developer, or any other person that you contract out some of the things that you need to do for your project. You can include some fees, and hourly typically is a good way to go, but again, rely on your specific country's realities and the market price again. So there is no point of asking us, oh, how much can we pay our web developer? I will not know this, because you might be in your own country, in your own community, or in your own city where the prices could be very different. So you need to do your research and identify how much would it cost per hour, or do they charge, you know, differently somehow per project. So you need to investigate that and understand that better, and include that specific information in the budget. Does the grant cover expenses used before March? So in the very, very rare individual cases, when your project had to start in February, for example, actually, let me go back. So no, not before March. So it's going to be, so you are going to be awarded at the end of February. And so from the date of your being awarded, that's when you officially could receive and spend YSEALI Seeds funding. So let's say you have been awarded in end of February 2021, you started kind of March 2021, but you had an expense on March 1st, but you have not received your YSEALI Seeds funding because we will be transferring you this funding. Let's say you have not received it until end of March. So in this case, you can reimburse yourself what you have spent on March 1st. So in this case, it's okay, but something, let's say you had an expense in November 2020, this would not be able to be reimbursed. Okay, let's see, I will take a few more. I know that we're already at 1 hour. So if some of you needs to drop out of the call, that's fine. We will have a recording. I will stick around for maybe 15 more minutes to answer some of the questions coming in. So, but thank you to those of you who have joined earlier. And if you need to go, that's okay. All right, can we conduct the project in 2 or 3 batch during time period? Yes, you can. Also, is the measurements have to be done during time periods, or it can be done after project period? So by measurements, you probably mean sort of the measurable impact or outcome or output of your project. You still need to have some kind of count of sorts, or some kind of ways to estimate or measure how successful or not some of the things you're doing are going for you, and we need to know about it because you will be submitting our monthly report. So we would prefer for you to tell us, for example, in September, our project have conducted 5 webinars, and we've had, 30 people participating in the webinar. So that's going to be a count enough for us just to see how your project is doing in the period of time. But then when you submit your final report at the very end of your project implementation, that's when you will tell us, all of the other things that in the long run, in the large scope of things, what your project have achieved throughout the entire program or throughout the entire implementation period. Okay, let's see what else. If I join YSEALI Seeds and got selected, am I not allowed to join the next year YSEALI program that go to US? No, those are different programs. So this one is YSEALI Seeds for the Future, which is a small grants competition for projects that will be implemented in Southeast Asia. What you are asking about is probably about YSEALI Fellowship Program, which is a different program that is also run by YSEALI. And YSEALI Fellowship Program allows, young leaders to be selected to go to the United States for a short period of time to be at a university. So anyway, a wonderful program. Again, one does not cancel another. So we only say if you have participated in the YSEALI Seeds for the Future program and you were selected this year, it means that next year you cannot apply for YSEALI Seeds for the Future again as one of the key 3 team members. You can be either consultant or additional team member, but you can not be a team project leader, treasurer, or secretary again if you have been selected already. All right. Is it okay if we invite some expert from EU, Portugal, trained consultants, fly from, pay for the expert fee, and only video call fly? video call flight ticket from their country to our country. So yeah, unfortunately, European Union flights will not be allowed. As far as I know, I think it's not going to be allowed either. So you will have to figure out either they will participate virtually, you know, through, like you mentioned, video call or Zoom, but they will not be able to, like, they can come, but at their own expense. You cannot cover out of YSEALI Seeds funding for them to come over, unfortunately. So only travel within Southeast Asia is allowed to be covered by YSEALI Seeds funds. In our marketing and sales project, we are going to distribute pamphlets to attract users manually. Must we put the YSEALI profile on it? It will affect the pamphlet space cost for the budgeting. If so, can we get the official brief description and the official logo? Oh, that's great, but you're jumping so ahead. Yes, so every selected YSEALI Seeds project will receive specific information on how you could use YSEALI logo and YSEALI Seeds logo. In fact, you will be required to use it properly with the specific guidelines that the State Department has for this program, because YSEALI is a United States government funded program. So there are specific regulations for how you're going to use the logos and what sequence you're going to use them. So all those kinds of things. Once you are selected, we will have that discussion during the training, and you will receive a specific document that will allow you to download the logos you need to put them on your specific materials, either digital materials or printed materials. So yeah, and you can include price for, you know, printing or digital material development or things like that in your YSEALI Seeds budget. Will we be sending the receipts of expenses to YSEALI? Should we include that in our budget? Great question. So you should collect your receipts yourself, and you should have them ready if we ask them, if we ask for them. But we're not probably going to ask everybody to just submit your receipts every month. It is not required, although you should keep the receipts yourself for your own purposes and in case if we ask you to send us in. Okay. Let's see, just a few more left. Thank you for all of the questions here. In the budget, can I put a budget such as motorcycle, since there is no available transportation in the locality where I will be conducting the project? The set amount costs $2,000. This will be used to sustain the project in the long run. Things. I feel you. I understand this is a top goal. From the first brief look at it, I don't think this will be allowed. But again, I might need to see the entire project proposal, and we might need to consult with the State Department to see if this could be allowed. But honestly, from where I'm standing and from the experience in the past, I do not think that this could be allowed, unfortunately. So you need to think of maybe other ways that you could still do your project without that expense. But if it comes to that, and you still believe there is absolutely no other way, you can still apply and put it in your budget and explain, and we'll see what, you know, what kind of recommendation or guidance we'll receive from this. Now is a pandemic, so there will be possibility we conduct the project in the situation. Any consideration regarding this? Will it be rejected? Let's say I'm going to do an offline seminar in February and Corona issue is still here. Yeah, so I would say for at least February, March, you know, very close to that kind of time, do not plan anything in person unless it's absolutely safe and your government has regulations and established that it is safe. So, because I know like in Brunei or in some other countries, the situation might be better and people already are allowed to meet in person. So it might be safe. Again, if you are from Brunei and the government deems it safe, you can plan on it and it's fine. But if you are in another part of Southeast Asia and it's still not safe, and there's no regulations from the government that says that it might be safe in a month or two, I'd say plan things off like online in the first few months, and then you can think about doing something offline maybe closer to the end of your project implementation. But yeah, do have some plan A and plan B, plan C in mind, just in case, so you could easily pivot in case of the coronavirus situation still prohibits you from fully doing things offline. Do we need to establish connections with with our intended partners before even submitting the proposal. For example, reach out to governmental bodies. No, you don't have to. It's good if you already are. That's great. If you already have some established partnerships you know about, you can let us know. This is great. But if you don't, that's fine. This is something that you will be literally doing as part of your project. So you could just mention in the proposal that we are planning to reach out or work with this, and that organization, or we are planning to submit our paperwork to the local government to get approval for specific activity. That's fine. So far, our project to teach stateless children is done quietly because Malaysia will arrest and imprison anyone who conspires to protect illegal immigrant. What do we need to do? Is it any law to protect us? I feel you. This is definitely a very tough and challenging situation, and your question is definitely very much valid and legitimate. One thing I would say, if you want to send us an email to talk about your situation privately, that's fine. One thing I mentioned here that you should, under YSEALI Seeds regulations, the projects that you run should not go against your local government. So you cannot use U.S. government funds to do some kind of activity that is perceived illegal by your own government. So yeah, this is like all I could say about this. But again, in order for us to know better what your project is all about, you can send us an email about that. Is there any interview or other process between? Okay, so the question is no interviews for selected teams. So you need to work on your proposal extra hard. If we register as YSEALI member, do we get any email confirmation? I'm not sure if they used to send a confirmation, I believe, but I'm not sure if the system always does that. So if you have submitted your YSEALI membership request, that's fine. As long as you did that, that's okay. So basically, YSEALI membership is you submitting a request to subscribe for newsletters, and that's fine. So if you start receiving emails from YSEALI, that means that you are a member. Okay, can we pivot from our initial idea when it's time for execution? The goal is the same, but since the time of application to execution, a few months would have passed, and as such, the idea proposed may have evolved. Yes, absolutely. And in fact, that's what we did with our 2020 cohort as well. As long as your idea is overall there, like you're not changing your project completely, you're just changing the way you're going to get to that goal is fine. So yeah, definitely good to have. That's why I'm saying I'm encouraging you to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, and just anticipate different ways that you can get to your goal overall. Because there are multiple ways. Not everything could be achieved through offline meetings. Some things could be, achieved online or with other ways. Does the project description have to include the work action plan and timeline, or is it a different document to submit? So you could include some action plan or a timeline in that same proposal. So it could be like a table that you insert into your text just to show us, okay, I'm hoping to start in March and then have some kind of event in April and then something like that. But again, this is not a requirement. You are not obligated to submit any work plan or action plan. You can include just a small portion in the proposal. But if you do have an extensive action plan or work plan or a good timeline with some, elaborate graphic or something, you can submit it as a supplemental additional documents because you do have that space in the application to submit any additional documents you have. Just keep in mind that the additional documents should not be more than 5 pages. And this is, again, you might think that, oh, the more I submit, the better they will, see how great my project is. No, you need to be concise and you need to be convincing right away. So whoever is reading your proposal does not need to spend 2 hours reading your proposal in order to understand how great you are. Okay, so it is your job to make sure that you write it in a way that the reader on the other end grasps and understands the idea of how great your project is, sooner. And they don't have to sift through all of the information and all of the additional details until they get to the point of what it is you're doing, okay? All right, let's see. Just 7 more questions left. This is great. Okay, so I have a specific question. Is it possible to still apply with 2 members of our group from Cambodia and Myanmar? These 2 members are over 35 and myself 22, who is from the US. So unfortunately, there are a few points here in your statement that makes you ineligible. First of all, if you are from the US and you are a US citizen, you are not eligible to apply for the YSEALI Seeds for the Future grant. Second of all, another eligibility criteria for YSEALI Seeds grant is that the key project members, so project leader, project secretary, project treasurer, must be between 18 and 35 years old by the time of their application, submission of their application. So that's a second thing that makes you probably ineligible. But the question is, can there be just 2 members of the group? We will really encourage you to try your best to have at least 3 team members. We do understand that once you are selected, things might change, and even throughout the duration of your project, and we've seen this in the past in some projects, when project team members drop out or they have some other responsibilities, that's fine. We understand that life happens. So what you will have to do as a team in those cases, if somebody drops out, is you will find a team member to replace or substitute this team member who dropped out while you are implementing your project. So that's why it's better for you to really enlist, all team members right now and see how you can all share responsibilities. But if something happens down the road, you have a freedom to change or substitute team members. Okay, so hopefully that covers your question. Again, if you are a US citizen and you're really passionate and you really want to be a part of the project in Southeast Asia, see if you can be an additional consultant. And we do have projects like that when we have somebody, a citizen of another country that is not in Southeast Asia, who are so excited and passionate, they just want to be a part of the project. And so they can be consultants, they could be additional team members, because there is no limit at how many you can have team members on your project, okay? So somebody says, I don't understand what category cannot exceed 20%, and if there are 4 categories, each category is maybe around 25. I mean, 20% of what? Of 15,000? Yes, so back to that initial question about the budgeting, that basically we do have subcategories in your budget, right? And so there is also a total amount that you ask, right? So let's say you're asking a total amount of $15,000 for the overall budget, but then you have totals for subcategories. Let's say your supplies would be $5,000 total. Your personnel is another $5,000 or something like that. I'm just making things up. So what I'm saying by this, one subcategory should not exceed 20% of your total. It means that your subcategory of supplies or personnel should not be more than 20% of that overall total $15,000 that you are asking. So yes, to your last point in the question, yes, so basically your subtotal in the budget overall should be more or less evenly spread throughout the budget versus pulling the most of the amount, like let's say, $7,000 out of $15,000 is just for personnel, and then there's just $2,000 or like $500 for other subcategories. Again, if it's still not clear, see if you can send us an email and we'll try to explain it more if you still have a maybe more specific question, or maybe if you bring your specific example so we can help guide you through your specific example so it is more clear and more tangible in that way. Let us know. With COVID, there is a need to trade, I'm not sure, within Southeast Asia, will YSEALI be able to help provide supporting travel documents? So I'm not sure what you mean by that, but if you want to send us an email or clarify your question a little bit. So in terms of documents, I mean, this is for your project, but YSEALI Seeds could provide a support letter for you. Let's say if you are at work, need to present to somebody to basically let your workplace know that you are a recipient of YSEALI Seeds, or sometimes when you're applying for other funding or to some governmental agency or some events or things like that, and you need to show a proof that you are a recipient of YSEALI Seeds and how much you are receiving from YSEALI Seeds, that's something that we will be able to provide to you upon your request. How can we effectively provide or give an impact to the people? Is social mobilization effective? That's a very, very broad question. So I wonder if you can, be more specific or give an example. So there are multiple ways of how your project could be effective and impactful for people. There are so many ways and so many areas, so much context in different countries for this. So if you can provide more details, that would be great. If I don't have Skype ID, that's okay. If you don't have Skype ID, you can just put NA or non-applicable, or just leave it blank. We use Skype just in case if we need to reach out to people and there's a, we have a trouble reaching out to somebody. Any guideline from YSEALI to conduct the project during COVID? So the guidelines would be basically your government's, local government's guidelines. We'll follow that as well. So if your local government does not allow meetings of more than 50 people or 20 people or something like that, you need to follow that guidelines of your government precisely. So from YSEALI, what we would say is that you need to keep yourself safe and your participants safe. So do not plan some activities that could endanger them with the potential spread of COVID. So any precautions that you can do in terms of your budgeting and proposal right now, you can plan on extra hand sanitizers or masks if, let's say, you're planning some kind of event down the road in the summer 2020 or something like that. So that's as much as I can cover right now. Let's see, can we get the sample selected application from alumni? This is something that came up earlier. So unfortunately, no. And the reason is there are multiple reasons why a specific application was selected in a specific year. So even if you see application from a project that was successful or selected previously, it does not mean that that's exactly how you need to build your proposal or your application. Again, there are so many factors that go into selecting a project, that you just need to stick to doing your best for yourself. And again, we provided with a template, we provided you with specific guidance for how you can structure your proposal. We gave you some examples of teams and their topics and their projects. So use that information to build your own proposal and kind of be a unique voice and stand out from the rest, and not replicate something that seemingly, seems like a success in the past, because there are multiple reasons. In the same way, I would say that there are multiple reasons why a project gets denied to. It sometimes is not that your idea is bad. There are other factors, and some countries are more competitive than others too, okay? Do we have to mention in the proposal how we are going to recruit other team members, or how many members we need? No, you don't have to. You can mention that you have a plan for recruiting, team members, if you do have that plan. If you don't, that's fine. Really up to you. Last question, everybody. Last question of the day. Can I request for more funds after my application has been accepted? No, unfortunately. So you need to request the amount from the YSEALI Seeds right away, and the amount you request is the amount that you will be granted once you are selected. So no more, no less. But typically that's the amount. I mean, you can request a little less, but unfortunately not more. All right. Okay, so I do see one last question that came in. So somebody asking, if we are selected, is it okay for YSEALI can help us asking our university to provide data and support us in implementation of our project at the right place, IT University, Ho Chi Minh City first? So unfortunately, no, we don't have any power or influence over some of the local universities or governmental agencies to come in and tell them that they need to help you. This is something that you will need to capitalize on your networking, and maybe reach out to your YSEALI coordinator, and to your YSEALI Seeds alumni from that city to see if they have connections. So that's how the networking typically works in these conditions. So that's something we will be able to help you point out to the resources that you can reach out to for additional support, but we unfortunately won't be able to come and do those things for you. All right, everybody, I know that we are way over time here, and thanks for those who are still sticking around here. And unfortunately, two last questions came in. Let me just take those, and then we will wrap this up. How become selected proposal that is granted? Is there particular characteristics? So I would recommend you to rewatch webinar 1 and 2, where we specifically talk about what it is that we're looking for in each proposal. There are several criteria that we evaluate and look for. So go ahead and watch the webinars recording on Cultural Vistas YouTube channel. And Jill, if you'd like to put that link again in the chat so people can see where to go. But again, all of you who have joined webinar today, you will receive an email with the link to this recording and to the slides as well. And the last question, when you say no more, no less for budget, is this including the revisions with the YSEALI team post-acceptance? Yes. So when I say that you will be revisiting your budget, it means that you will be revisiting within your overall total. So you won't be able to ask more or less. You will just be revisiting the way you spread out your amounts in different categories, or maybe the way you phrase certain things, or you will be able to reallocate some expenses. Let's say if travel is no longer happening, you can allocate this funds to something else, but your amount stays the same. Thank you for your question. I should have mentioned that right away. Okay. Does my project has to be based on a pressing issue in my country? It could be. I mean, you just need to have a reason for running your project. So you need to tell us why. I mean, it might not have to be an overwhelmingly most pressing, most popular, whatever issue, but it could be something that you care about deeply and you're passionate about, and you need to tell us why your project will be able to, help out with that issue or address that issue that you are so deeply passionate about. That's it, everybody. Thank you so much for all of your questions. Wow, we addressed so many today. We really appreciate you joining today. Please don't forget to submit your application. The deadline is November 8th. So again, if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to us via email. Again, and because of the volume of emails, we might not be able to address right away all of the questions, but we will still get to you as fast as we can. So thank you, everybody. You will receive the email and just a little bit later today. So we appreciate your time and attention. Thanks, everyone.